Agricultural subsidies. Now, an agricultural subsidy is a government incentive paid to agri-businesses, agricultural organizations, and farms to supplement their income, manage the supply of agricultural commodities, and influence the cost and supply of such commodities. Now, agricultural subsidy acts as an incentive to promote agricultural development in India. It helps stimulate agricultural production and attain self-sufficiency. Further, subsidies also contribute to better cropping pattern, employment, and income of beneficiaries. Now, there are different types of agricultural subsidies being provided in India. These are explicit input subsidies, implicit input subsidies, output subsidies, and food subsidies. Now, explicit input subsidies are payments made to the farmers to meet a part of the cost of input. For example, subsidy on improved or high yielding variety of seeds, fertilizers, plant protection chemicals for certain crops. Implicit input subsidies are hidden in nature. The implicit input subsidies, prices of the input are administratively determined and priced low compared to their economical cost. Now, output subsidy is a type of subsidy that is provided in order to encourage the output of a particular product by partially offsetting the production cost or losses. The objective of this subsidy is to expand production of a particular product more so that the market would promote, but without raising the final price to the customers. Now, the difference between the per quintal economic cost and the per quintal central issue price gives the quantum of food subsidy. The food subsidy comprises of subsidy provided to the FCI, that is Food Corporation of India, for procurement and distribution of wheat and rice for maintaining the strategic reserve of food grains, and subsidy provided to states or undertaking decentralized procurement. As per Economic Survey 2020, food subsidy incurred by the government has risen substantially over the years from about 0.6 lakh crores in 2009-10 to about 1.7 lakh crores in 2018-19. Now, agricultural subsidies can also be categorized on the basis of mode of payment. They can be direct subsidy or indirect subsidy. Now, direct subsidies are money transfers by the government that reach the ultimate beneficiary through a formal predetermined route. Direct subsidies increase the beneficiary's buying power and helps raise the living standards. In agriculture, direct subsidies help farmers buy necessary inputs from market, example PM Kisan, minimum support price, and DBT, that is direct benefit transfer. Now, moving on to indirect subsidies. Indirect subsidies are provided through price reduction, welfare, and other ways, but do not include a direct cash payment. They reach the farmer along with the use of inputs. Farmers get subsidized products while the subsidy amount is provided to the provider of the product. For example, for fertilizer subsidy, power subsidy, water subsidy, etc. Now, indirect subsidy offers certain benefits like in absence of the information availability, farmers may not be able to make the right choices without direct subsidy being provided. Hence, indirect subsidy is a way of government making the right choices for the farmers. There is no wastage of money, unlike the cash where direct subsidies where cash is provided directly to the farmers and he may waste it on non-productive activities like alcoholism. It prevents inclusion exclusion error. Now, indirect subsidies are easier to monitor. Government can better exercise control over agency being provided the subsidy rather than directly dealing with the individual farmers. Government subsidy have a vital role to play in agricultural sector development. The impact is practically visible on the production and distribution. However, there are certain issues related to the agricultural subsidies. Now, agricultural subsidies lead to heavy fiscal burden on the government. The total outgo on fertilizer subsidy alone in 2017-18 was 70,000 crore rupees. Now, power subsidy has led to overuse of groundwater, which has further resulted in dramatic fall in groundwater levels. Due to fertilizer subsidy being offered, there has been an indiscriminate use of fertilizers by the farmers. This has led to a decline in soil fertility and an overall reduction in agricultural productivity. Fertilizer subsidies are generally cornered by the manufacturers and the rich farmers of Punjab and Haryana. It fails to provide benefits to the targeted groups, especially small and marginal farmers. Now, price subsidies like MSP and are cereal centric. etc., and have neglected pulses, oilseeds, and coarse cereals. Most of the subsidies are regionally biased and have benefited the rich states which are able to grow marketable surplus and have well developed infrastructure. States like Bihar and Eastern UP have failed to derive similar benefits. Now, in order to resolve the various issues related to agricultural subsidies, following steps could be taken. Better targeting of subsidies with the usage of JAM, that is Jandhan Aadhaar Mobile Number Trinity, can reduce the fiscal burden. Now, government needs to rationalize certain subsidies like power subsidies to check indiscriminate exploitation of groundwater. Promotion of soil health card, organic farming, neem coated urea can reduce the quantum of fertilizers used in agricultural field. This will rationalize the fertilizer subsidy, which has already put a heavy fiscal strain on the government. Now, direct benefit transfer, that is DBT, of subsidies through Aadhaar authentication will solve issues like inclusion exclusion error, ensure better targeting of beneficiaries, crop diversification by including more crops under MSP will benefit such farmers growing those crops. Now, agricultural subsidies and the WTO. Some of the notable agreements under the WTO are as follows. Agreement on Sanitary and Phytosanitary Measures, SPS, sets out basic rules for food safety and animal and plant health standards. Agreement on Agriculture, under which first and third world countries are required to limit their food subsidies to 5% and 10% respectively to the value of their agricultural production in 1986. Now, Peace Clause, which gives temporary immunity to India and other developing countries to continue their respective food subsidy programs and protect them from being challenged under the WTO agreement by countries like USA. Now, Agreement on Agriculture aims to regulate the agricultural subsidy through its box mechanism. Green box are those subsidies that don't disrupt trade or only cause minimum damage to trade balance. And blue box are subsidies that aim to limit production and don't increase with production. Subsidies are allowed. So, blue box subsidies are allowed. Example subsidies given for research and cattle vaccination. Amber box subsidies are subject to quantitative limits such as they are trade distorting in nature. Example subsidies on diesel, electricity, fertilizers, and MSP, etc. Now, India's stand on WTO rules. The government of India has cited two main reasons for its push towards agricultural subsidies. The first is that India has a large production population of poor farmers who require government support in form of subsidies and procurement at MSP. Now, India has a large population of malnourished poor families who need subsidized food grains under the NFSA Act, which is the National Food Security Act. Now, India's public stock holding program and MSP have been hotly debated at WTO between the developed and developing blocs. The USA and Canada alleged in 2018 that India substantially underreported its market price support for five types of pulses. Further, Canada, the USA, and Australia complained that India has not declared its agricultural export subsidies for more than 8 years. Also in 2020, India had invoked the Peace Clause, which prevents WTO members from initiating complaints against a developing country for the compliance with certain obligations because India exceeded the ceiling on support it can offer farmers for rice for the marketing year 2018-19. This was the first time any country has taken recourse to this safeguard, and this has fueled further debates in WTO surrounding India's farm subsidy policies. However, India has maintained its stand and that it has always complied with WTO rules. India has continuously defended its position on issues and emphasized the need to prioritize food and livelihood security of its population. Also, the issue of its food subsidy being violative of WTO norms, India has dismissed these allegations and demanded that MSP should be calculated by using a recent reference instead of the year 1986 as provided under the Agreement on Agriculture. Now, in 1986, India's agricultural production was much lower than the countries like USA. So, even in absolute quantitative terms, USA's 5% would be much bigger than India's 10%. As a result, first world countries are able to give much larger amount of subsidies to their farmers, which is unfair. Moving on to agricultural pricing policies. Now, India's agricultural price policy includes three main types of administrative prices, which is support, procurement, and issue price. Now, minimum support price is an agricultural produce price set by the government of India to purchase directly from the farmers. This is not enforceable by law. By definition, this rate is to safeguard the farmers to a minimum profit for the harvest if the open market has a lesser price than the cost incurred. Now, MSP is fixed on the recommendations of CACP, that is Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, which is an attached office to the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare and is announced before the sowing season. As of now, MSP is offered on 23 commodities, which are 7 cereals, 5 pulses, 7 oilseeds, and 4 commercial crops. The commercial crops are copra, sugarcane, cotton, and raw jute. Oilseeds are groundnut, rapeseed mustard, soybean, sesame, sunflower, safflower, and niger seeds. Pulses are gram, tur, moong, urad, and lentil. Cereals include paddy, wheat, maize, sorghum, pearl millet, barley, and ragi. For sugarcane, the mechanism is a bit different. It requires the sugar mill companies to pay a fair and remunerative price fixed by the government, whereas for other crops, government itself procures at MSP. Now, moving on to the sugar industry, the pricing of sugar is governed by the statutory provisions of the Sugarcane Control Order of 1966, issued under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. There are two mechanisms of sugarcane pricing followed in India. The first one is FRP, which is fair and remunerative price, and the second one is state advised prices. Now, FRP is the cane price fixed by CACP after consulting the state governments and Association of Sugar Industry. FRP is the minimum price paid by the mills to the farmers. Parameters considered for FRP includes recovery of sugar from sugarcane, cost of production of sugarcane, price at which sugarcane is sold by producers, availability of sugar to the customers at fair price, reasonable profit margin for growers, revenue realization from sale of its byproducts like molasses, and returns of the growers from alternate crops. Now, state advised prices, citing differences in the cost of production, productivity levels, and also a result of pressure from farmers group, some states declare state specific sugarcane prices called state advised prices, which is usually higher than FRPs. Now, sugarcane industry's distribution can be seen in whole of Uttar Pradesh, northwestern part of Bihar, and some parts of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. Now, some recent steps taken by the government to promote the sugar industries are as follows. The import duty was increased from 50% to 100% along with the removal of 20% export duty. The government had earlier allowed export of 2 million tons of sugar until the end of 2017-18 marketing year in order to clear surplus stocks and improve cash flows to millers for making payments to the sugarcane farmers. Now, government introduced duty-free import authorization scheme under which exporters are allowed to import sugar at zero duty within 3 years. Now, stock holding limits were placed on sugar mills. Buffer sugar stock of 30 lakh tons were built. The government introduced subsidy, transport subsidy, production subsidy and transport subsidy, and 50 lakh tons export quotas. New biofuel policy in 2018 allows sugar mills to make ethanol from cane juice, molasses, food grains, potatoes, etc. However, the sugar industry in India continues to face certain problems, like although India has the largest area under cultivation, yet the yield per hectare, which is around 65.5 tons per hectare, is extremely low as compared to some of the major sugarcane producing countries of the world, which is around 90 tons per hectare in case of Java. Now, due to short crushing season of sugarcane, the mills and its workers remain idle during most part of the year, creating financial problems for the industry as a whole. Fluctuating sugarcane production affects the supply of sugarcane to the mills. The average rate of recovery of sugar in India is less than 10%, which is quite low as compared to other major sugar producing countries. Recovery rate is as high as 14.6% in case of Java. Now, high cost of sugarcane, inefficient technology, uneconomical process of production, and heavy excise duty results in high cost of production. The production cost of sugar in India is one of the highest in the world. Most of the sugar mills in India are small size with capacity of 10,000, 1,000 to 1,500 tons per day. This makes large scale production uneconomical. Most of the machinery used in Indian sugar mills are old and obsolete, some being 50 to 60 years old and needs rehabilitation. But low profit margins prevent sugar mill owners from replacing old machineries by new ones. Sugar industry in India faces competition with Kandseer and Good. Kandseer. Over half of the sugar mills are located in Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh, with these two states accounting for about 60% of the production. This leads to regional imbalances. The per capita annual consumption of sugar in India is only 16.3 kgs as against 48.8 kgs in the USA and 47.1 kg in Australia and so on. The MSP of a crop is based on following considerations, which is the cost of production, demand and supply, price fluctuations, market price trends, different costs, international market prices, and agricultural wage rate. Now, Government of India adopted A2 plus FL formula for calculating MSP. Cost A2 includes the actual cost paid by the farmers for purchase of various inputs like seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, hired laborers, rent of land and machinery if hired. Now, cost FL refers to the cost of family labor. Adding both costs give the A2 plus FL cost. Now, MSP is 1.5 times the A2 plus FL cost. Major objectives of MSP policies are to support the farmers from distress selling and to procure food grains for public distribution. Further, such minimum support prices are fixed at an incentive level so as to induce farmers to make capital investment for improvement of their farm and to motivate them to adopt improved crop production technologies to set up their production and thereby their net income. The policy of MSP had other beneficial outcomes like income security to farmers, bringing investment into agriculture, building up buffer stocks for public distribution, stabilizing food prices in open market, and consumer welfare. However, there are some issues associated with MSP policy. MSP is higher for wheat and rice compared to that for cereals and pulses. So farmers are more incentivized for growing profitable crops and hence cropping pattern gets distorted. There has been continuous hike in MSP and procurement price due to rich farmers lobby which has contributed to inflationary trends. Now FCI and NAFED procurement of MSP is usually confined to big towns and districts. Farmers in remote and tribal areas are unable to bring their produce to the procurement agencies due to high transportation cost. Now, rise in price of cereals due to higher MSP leads to significant burden of high cost for the buyers. This has a negative impact on rural poor. Now, 95% of the procurement of wheat at MSP is from Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP. Other states do not get much benefit from it. Procurement by government under MSP leads to fiscal squeeze. Due to extra expenditure in food procurement, the other sectors lose out on new investment. Owing to the above issues, following reforms can be implemented. Scientist M.S. Swaminathan has suggested C2 formula for computing MSP. C2 formula computed lot of costs, including imputed rent on his own land, imputed interest on his own capital, etc. Using C2 formula would increase the MSP amount. Procurement under MSP should be at market driven prices so that it does not distort market prices and cause inflation. Since agriculture is a state subject, state should be consulted while deciding MSP amount. Since MSP is announced just before the sowing season, many farmers, especially small and medium farmers, miss out on the notification. The MSP system can only be effective if the producers are aware of the MSP well in advance. Now, a robust network of procurement agencies should be available for farmers to sell their produce. Government introduced decentralized procurement in this regard. States which adopted decentralized procurement include Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Karnataka, Kerala, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, and Jharkhand for rice, Gujarat, Punjab, Rajasthan for wheat, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and West Bengal, which is for rice and wheat both. Now, more coarse cereals should be brought under the ambit of MSP to encourage diversification of crops. Moving on to PM Asha, that is Pradhan Mantri Antyodaya Annadata Aay Surakshan Yojana. Now, PM Asha is a central sector scheme launched by Agricultural Ministry with the following three components. Price support scheme, that is central agencies will do physical procurement of pulses, oilseeds and copra. Price deficiency payment scheme. In this, direct payment of the difference between MSP and the selling modal price will be made available to the pre-registered farmers selling his produce in the notified market yard through a transparent process. Under PDPS, it is proposed to cover all oilseeds for which MSP is notified. This scheme does not involve any physical procurement of the crops as farmers are paid the difference between the MSP price and the sale or modal price on the disposal in notified markets. Now, pilot of private procurement and stockist scheme. Under this, private agencies will be hired on behalf of government to procure commodities at MSP. Now, procurement prices, they are higher than MSP and are meant essentially for the purchase of quantities needed by the government to maintain its PDS and for building a buffer stock. Now, FCI, the nodal central agency of Government of India, along with other state agencies, undertake procurement of wheat and paddy. The process of procurement is known as open-ended procurement, where central agencies like FCI, National Agricultural Cooperative Marketing Federation of India, that is NAFED, purchase the entire quantity of food grains offered by the farmers at MSP. Collectively, this entire mechanism is known as Market Intervention Scheme and Price Support Scheme, that is MIS PSS. Issue price, these indicate prices at which government supplies food grains through fair price shops and ration depots. That'll be it.